record. All right, thank you guys for joining us this evening. Wanted to quickly review, and the format will be very similar to how we've been doing it. I'll go over the lesson portion quickly, and then we'll have Kimmy and Jenny share their thoughts and their wisdom for us. So first, review. If there's one thing that I wanted to get out of this course, it is that we as gospel parents, our goal and objective must be to shepherd our child's heart. Our hearts are never neutral, right? We're always worshiping something, either our creator or created things. Unfortunately for us, the default mode for human beings is to worship created things, right? Not creator. The Bible tells us that there is no one righteous, no, not one. Our children, though they are very cute and young, are not innocent. They are born sinners. That is their nature. And thus, our job and our goal, again, is to direct them and point them to Christ, right? So that they will one day put their faith and trust in Him and live with an understanding and fear of the Lord. What is more important than this goal, right, as parents? This is the ultimate goal. And thus, how do we do this? We shepherd our child's heart through example and prayer, right? We model our faith. Children learn from, our ways and our practices, right? We also learn that we need to pray because we cannot change their hearts. Only God can. Last week, we saw the importance of discipline. And not just disciplining behavior, but going further and explaining sin, having them wrestle with why this is wrong. And at the same time, seeing that there is forgiveness and restoration. We also saw the importance of authority and how we must teach them to be able to receive instruction so that we can influence and direct them later on. And today we'll be focusing on how communication and affection can help us shepherd our children. So first, let's talk about communication. And three things that I wanted to talk about with regards to communication. Our words are powerful. Communication is not just learning how to express your thoughts, but learning how to draw the thoughts of another. And then lastly, communication allows you to draw out their sin, which enables you to point them and show them their need for Christ. So first, our words are powerful, right? Our tongues have the power to build up and tear down. With our words, we could absolutely destroy our children, right? And make them even more insecure than they already are. So much of their identity can be based on what we say to them. And that's really scary. But the good part is, the reverse can also happen as well, right? With our words, we can build them up. We can even turn insecurity into confidence. Through the preaching of the word, right, we can bring dead hearts back to life. That's a power of the gospel. Romans 10:14-15 states this, right? How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how will they to believe in him of whom they've never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. This is our job as parents, right? We often, sometimes we can delegate this to someone else, right? The church, Sunday school teachers, and obviously we are here to help. But the main person who is designated to bring up their children in the Lord are the parents, right? On that final day when Jesus comes back, you won't be able to give an excuse, right? All the church, they kind of messed up. They kind of dropped the ball. No. This will be a responsibility that will fall on the parents, right? Deuteronomy 6:6-9. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Parents, it's very clear. Parents, this is your responsibility. Like everywhere you go, whatever you do, you ought to be raising your children in the ways of the Lord, right? We need to be the ones teaching them the gospel. And so my point here is that, with our words, right, we can do this. Words have this power to be able to change dead hearts, right? Through the Spirit's working in you, through that preaching of the word, people can come to know Jesus. Second thing about communication. Communication is not just learning how to express your thoughts, it's learning how to draw out the thoughts of another. When your children are young, for the most part, what they have to say is not that interesting, right? Especially, my kids right now, 3 and 5, and yeah, they could just they want my attention. Look, Dad, look, and they have absolutely nothing interesting to say, right? And so usually communication is one way, right? We talk, they listen. That's how it goes. And especially so in, how we were raised, right? In a first generation, if you had first generation, Asian parents, right? I never had a conversation really with my dad, right? He would just tell me what to do and I would listen. Plus, obviously it was hard because of the language barrier. But see, then what happens is when children get older and parents want to talk to them, the children have, withdrawn, right? They've learned that communication is only one way. But this shouldn't be the case, right? We want our kids to know that it is safe to talk to us and to communicate their thoughts. And this has to start early, at an early age, right? I was able to kind of question Hetty and Grace and how their relationship is. And, it's so different from how we grew up, from my relationship with my parents and how we grew up, because they started early, right? They started that communication early. However, what we have to know is that children have a hard time communicating, right? This is something that has a learned skill. And so you see them kind of lashing out or staying silent, or they withdraw because they don't know how to communicate well, right? And so it's our job as parents to help them communicate by asking questions, by trying to draw them out, trying to communicate as much as possible. For example, let's say you bought them some new shoes, but you can tell that they don't like it, that they're kind of sulking, they're in a bad mood. They wanted more expensive ones that everyone else has. One-way communication is this, saying something like, dude, you should be thankful that you even have shoes, right? Or something like, I grew up with cheap shoes all the time. Both reactions are, just one-way communication. But what is better is to try to get a response, right? I feel like something's wrong. Why is that? And just trying to talk to them and trying to get them to communicate to you, right? And their response might be, again, like I said, kind of gibberish, and that's okay. You're helping them express themselves and their feelings, and you're also showing that it's safe, right, to communicate, to talk. That's important because of number 3, right? The third part of communication, which allows you to draw out their sin so that you can point them to Jesus. You want to help them as parents. You want to help your child understand their behavior and their inner struggle. You want to get at their hearts. You want to figure out the why behind the actions. When Jesus was confronted with a question, he didn't just answer it, right? He told a parable. For example, someone approached him, right? We all know this. Someone asked him, "Who's your neighbor?" Jesus could have just said, "Everyone." And that's the correct answer. But he told that parable and he asked the question after the parable. He says, "So who is your neighbor?" And see, by doing it this way, he made the person confront their own heart. And you could do this too, right? And it's probably not through parable. We're not Jesus. We can't make up a parable on the spot. But you can, share a personal story. You can ask questions. The point is you want to help them see how their outward behavior is determined by their hearts. To help you to help you guide you through this, 4 Ds, right? Desire, demand, disappointment, destruction. I learned this in seminary, and I still use this for counseling. Right? This is a tool. If I get stuck, if I'm like kind of don't know where I'm going with this, I go to this 4 Ds, right? Desire leads to demand, leads to disappointment, which leads to destruction. I'll go through it. I'll explain what this is, right? Desire. I want approval from my father. This leads to demand. My father should be encouraging to me, right? This leads to disappointment. Why can't my father be like other fathers? And then this leads to destruction. I hate my father. I'm not going to talk to him. And you could do this with anything, right? For married couples who are fighting, maybe, right? Desire. I want my personal time, which leads to demand. My spouse should know that I had a hard day. They should take care of the kids more, which leads to disappointment, right? Why are they so lazy? And then that leads to destruction, and that's when the screaming, the yelling, the fighting happens. We usually see the end part, the destruction part, right? Where people are flipping out, they're screaming, they're fighting. But that started with a desire, a root desire that turns sinful, right? And as parents, we want to try to show our children this, right? Their heart issue, ultimately so that they can see and repent and turn to Christ. A couple words of advice. Sometimes our children are not ready to have such a heady, deep conversation, right? You're ready. You're ready to pour into them. You're ready to have this deep conversation. You're ready to show them the 4Ds, but they just want to play, right? They just want to kind of go about their day. And that's okay. This takes time. This takes effort. Your child has to be in the right mood, and communication is not a one-time thing. It's a lifetime thing. Second piece of advice, you don't have to leave every conversation with your agenda, right? If this is true communication, sometimes you could just listen and chew and pray and think and learn from them, right? And then maybe continue the conversation later. But the point is, you don't have to kind of win. You don't have to get your side across all the time. So that's communication, right? That's how we shepherd our children's heart. You start early, you get at the heart, you teach and you preach the gospel because your words are powerful. Next, love and affection. Now, I know that this may seem like a no-brainer, right? Obviously, as parents, we're called to love and show affection to our children. But this isn't an automatic thing, right? It can be tough. It can be costly. I know that parents sometimes don't want to have kids, and it's more kind of like an accident. Your plans change, your career change. It's inconvenient. Maybe you thought that this was going to be an easy baby. It's not an easy baby, right? On top of that, you may have one kid who's amazing and one kid who isn't, right? And it's hard to be affectionate and loving to both equally. When one is grateful, when one's an A student, it's easy to play favorites. It's easy to see one child as always a bad one. Middle child syndrome can be a real thing. But this is a necessity, right? Without love and affection, our attempts to shepherd will be in vain. Dr. Ross Campbell explains that unless children feel their parents' love and acceptance, they will not internalize the lessons you're trying to teach them. And I think that, we probably already knew this, right? You don't need a PhD to know that love is a necessity, right? Love and affection is what our children's hearts are yearning for. children, especially at a young age, they long to be known, understood, and loved, right? Teenagers are insecure about everything, wearing the right clothes, what their hair looks like, what to say. They're trying to test out their personalities. Am I funny? Am I emotional? Am I witty, sarcastic? They will join a bad crowd just because, they feel accepted by them. They'll fall for a guy that they know that, they probably shouldn't be with just because they show them, that person shows them attention. All this to say, they need and crave love and acceptance. And as parents, we need to be their source. We need to be that source of comfort and affection, or also look elsewhere. If our household isn't a source of comfort and stability and love, they're not going to want to stay, right? They're not going to want to come home. But see, when it is a source of love and affection and comfort and stability and safety, right? They will come back, and they will choose to come under our influence, right? They will seek out our advice and wisdom. Once again, I'm guessing no one's shocked by this. It's pretty obvious. Just think about even when we minister and evangelize to non-believers, right? Oftentimes the best evangelism is our love, right? It's the way we live our lives. We can teach people the gospel, and that is obviously primary and so important. But when we actually sacrifice and lay down our lives for them and love, that can be so much, that can be so impactful, right? It can just really bring the message home. And so how do we do this? Once again, very basic stuff, but I just wanted to go over this. Best ways to show affection from Dr. Ross Campbell: focused attention, eye contact, physical touch, verbal encouragement. Focused attention is just time with you and your child, right? Not in a big group, not with just even your whole family. This is just one-on-one. And this can be a meal or a trip together. If you have a lot of kids, this is something that, he advocated that is very important, just to have focused time with you and your child. Eye contact, very crucial part of active listening. And let me tell you, this is hard, right? Especially when they're young. We're watching something on our computers, and they come up to us, and we just kind of like brush them off a little bit. But eye contact shows that you care for them, right? It shows that you're listening. Physical touch, this is hugging, sitting on lap, wrestling. As they get older, it turns into something, probably less, right? Like patting on the back, hugs, stuff like that. Verbal encouragement. It is so easy to come up with faults than virtues, right? But they need our verbal encouragement, right? It helps build self-esteem and identity. I'm teaching Eliab right now. I mean, I think we all are kind of with figuring this whole homeschooling, virtual learning kind of thing. I'm teaching Eliab math, and I'm doing the same thing that my mom did to me, which is shame, right? How do you not know this? Like I just taught you this. We just did this yesterday. But so I need to hear this as well, right? It's so obvious. All of these are so obvious. And yet it's something that we need to remember and do, right? Because it can be easy to neglect. Doing this, right? Doing all these things is a part of shepherding, right? This is how we guide our kids. And so to kind of sum up the lesson portion, right? Example, prayer, discipline, authority, communication, and affection, right? These are ways we can shepherd our children's hearts. There are so many things that we could have talked about with regards to parenting. We're just kind of, I know that there's so much more that we could have covered. How to deal with bullying, how to talk about sex, how to deal with an angry child. And these are all important things. And we do have resources for you, right? If you ever get to that point, We have a church community that you can always go to ask for advice. But once again, I wanted to focus this course on the most important thing, right? Something that is kind of overarching, that kind of should permeate into everything that we do as parents, which is to point them to Jesus. And hopefully you see the importance of getting at our child's heart and how that impacts our parenting. There will be days, many days, when we fail as parents to do this well. And that's why, as Elder George mentioned last week, we need grace. And the good news is that we do worship a gracious God. I saw this quote, and I thought it was very good. We haven't raised our children well enough for them to be Christians. Right? We haven't raised our children well enough for them to be Christian. But thanks be to God that that is not the standard. That's not the measuring stick, right? God is the ultimate shepherd who is working in our child's hearts. And that's the greatest comfort for all of us as parents. All right, well, that's it for the lesson portion. I wanted to now transition into the more practical portion where we get to glean from the wisdom of Jenny and Kimmy, two great moms. If you guys could share your video, that would be great. Thank you. Let's jump right in. I'll start with Kimmy. At what age did you think that you could have a meaningful conversation with your child? What was the hardest conversation you had, and how did it go?
Let's see. I think that if you were to ask my girls that question, like, what do you remember having meaningful conversations? They would probably say much younger age than I would think. My definition of what's meaningful and their definition of what's meaningful probably very different. I feel like when they were school age, I remember more of those kind of deeper conversations because there was just a lot more to talk about. They were interacting with other kids and, social issues. There was just a lot more topics to discuss. And so I feel like we just probably had more conversations. But very short, right? Simple stuff, nothing, nothing too deep. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is just talk all the time as much as possible, communicate as much as possible, and no topic should be too difficult to talk about. And I think kids, they just read adults so well, like they know if you're uncomfortable talking about a particular topic. And so if you seem very at ease about talking about whatever it is, then they'll be at ease to talk about it too. So, I mean, we, even to this day, we talk about, all the taboo topics, right? We'll talk about sex. We'll talk about porn. We'll talk about, whatever it is going on in the world, taking drugs, alcohol, all those real life issues. And we talk very openly about them because we always have talked openly about them, even when they were young. I mean, we took the topic seriously. It wasn't light, but we were certainly very open, and we wanted them to feel safe about talking to us about anything. So, yeah, I mean, I think it, depends on the child. If you have a child that's a talker too, and just all the time, and they want to tell you about everything that happened in their day, great. But then there might be another child where you may have to ask more of those open-ended questions and draw them out a little bit more. So yeah, depending on the child, but yeah, just be open and try to look comfortable. Even if you may not feel comfortable, try to look comfortable talking about the topic.
Did you or saying, give the sex talk, and what age did you do that, and how did that go?
Yeah. So sex ed is in fifth grade for our school. And so I made it a point to speak with them before the sex ed. So this was, I would say, summer before the fifth grade. So sometime in the fourth grade. And so none of them had any idea. They were completely clueless. And I do something called a passport to purity. That's what it's called. It's just this whole system created by Focus on the Family. And it's fantastic. It comes with CDs, it comes with a booklet, it comes with a workbook for you to share with your child. And the idea is that you take them away for a weekend and you make it just a fun weekend between you and the child, just that focused attention that Pastor Simon talked about, right? This is a great opportunity for that. So we went away, stayed overnight, and each child, I took them to a different place. So you can stay at a hotel, you can stay at someone's house, as long as there's privacy, and you make it a fun weekend. You do activities, and then you have these sessions, and I built in the sessions. There are 3 sessions a day, we talked about all the different topics. It's not just about sex, but it's about purity, and it's about honoring God with your body, and just there's so many different age appropriate topics to this series. So I highly recommend it, and I've passed this series on to all of my friends. I think that Manam and Stephen might have my set right now. I'm sure they'd be happy to share it with you. But it's it's a really great resource that I would say you tap into when you're ready, when your child is ready.
Awesome. Thank you. Jenny, same question for you. How's it with your family?
Um, I would say with my kids, I mean, it depends with each child, but I think it's around age 5, you can start having these meaningful conversations. I remember with going down in order with my children, with Jeffrey, one of the more difficult conversations I've had with him was about stealing. And I remember coming to Kimmy about this when it happened, because I remember thinking, what have we done wrong? He's stealing, he stole, he was in the first grade. And I thought I cried when I found out he had done this in class, stole some Pokemon cards from someone else's backpack. And, it wasn't, he was a accomplice, if that's the name for it. He was in a combo grade class, and the older child, spoke to him and told him, and so I think about desire, demand, disappointment, destruction. I think that really goes hand in hand with that, even though I didn't know those terms. Because I couldn't understand why he would do that. He never, expressed to us he wanted more Pokemon cards. He didn't want, a lot of this, I had no idea. And I thought we were pretty involved. But it just, but even, I think the hardest part for me was finding out that he just couldn't come up with it. Like, he couldn't admit to it. It took 2 weeks for him to admit to it. And every day that passed by, I was dying inside. I thought, what is wrong with my child? I just remember being so disappointed in myself, being disappointed, like more in myself than in him, because I felt it was a reflection on me. And I think that's the danger in parenting, is that, like you said, they come in as sinners, they're going to emulate others, and they're just going to have to figure out, they're just going to have to, like, we can shepherd them, but it's not, they have their own minds, and they have to figure out, where where God is leading them, right? And I think I felt like it was all my fault, and it really is a life lesson for them, and for him to come to grips with it within the 2-week time period. I think it showed me something about him. It showed me that as a first child, he takes it very hard. Like, failure is very hard for him. Admitting wrong is very hard for him. He, in a lot of ways, I think, and I say this because I think I see myself that way too, as a first child. And it's just very hard to admit you're wrong. And I couldn't make him admit it, right? But when I found out that, that he was the culprit, and that, with all the class discussions they had every day going on, I just felt more and more like saddened, and I was grieving. But I remember thinking, this is his process too. He needs to process all of this, and we have to be available for him to be ready to talk. And you can't make them talk, right? You can talk at them, but it's a process that they have to figure out on their own. And so we just needed to wait, and it was hard waiting. That was really hard for me. I remember really struggling with that. With Christina, so, after all of that, I would say it all ended really well in that he learned his lesson, but it took a lot of patience on my part to hold my tongue. And, our words matter. Our words are powerful. They can hurt. Even though they intend to discipline, they can, it's a matter of timing as well. You kind of have to just, I think for me, it was just a matter of being patient and before trying to put matters into my own hands. With my daughter, with Christina, I think she's so easygoing. It's so hard to see if there's anything amiss with her. I feel like I have to intentionally put time to be with her, intentionally put time in to get her to get her to talk to me. Because for her, she's very, I don't know if it's being a middle child or if it's also just being the only girl. She's very content with her girlfriends. And I think, especially now at this age where she's turned 10 and she's, I think it's easier for her to turn to her friends than to us. But when it comes to these deep conversations, I find that I have to draw them out, but also be patient with just lying. I lay on her bed and I just kind of pretend I'm asleep. She likes that too, because she wants me to cuddle with her at night. But, a lot of times, you'll find as a parent, you have so many things you want to do after the kids go to bed. And so it's really hard for me to give up my free time to do that. But even at this age, she loves doing that. And so if I lie down with her, it's surprising how much comes up. And I think this is the case with a lot of kids. Cuddle time at night, a lot of things come up at any age. With Isaac, it was a lot about meaning of life. It was a lot about, like, if God knew, Adam and Eve were going to sin, why did he create them? Why did he create us? What's the purpose of us being in this world then? And so a lot of these conversations come up when they know you're listening. And it's great to see them, to see their thinking grow. So I'd say a lot of these conversations can start at elementary school age. Never underestimate them. Just like we said in one of the sessions, they hear everything you say. They also process a lot of things without you realizing it. And I was going to say about the sex ed, one thing to note with girls, or even with just kids in general, is, their developmental maturity level. I would say with Jeffrey, George had the talk with him before he had all that information passed out in class. But, for him, he was so naive to it all. And that was a good thing, right? So that George could introduce all these things beforehand with the biblical approach, right? And I think that for him, that it was timely, but he could have also waited a little before having all that information said. With Christina, I was anticipating since third grade. And I've talked to many friends from church about this, because people would comment about how tall Christina was. And she's just, her being so tall was also a factor of, like, she might, just develop earlier. And it's so true, because I think if I had to prepare myself mentally, because Jeffrey had this talk and I'm like, phew, I got 2 more years. I don't have to worry about, having this talk with, Christina, because George did that side, right? With being a father figure and being a male figure, he had that talk. But I thought, oh no, when I talked to his sister, because Christina's she's very Chong-like, not so much like my family. And so when I talked to George's sister, things happened for her at age 9/10. Christina's 10, And a lot of things happened for her at age 10. And so I felt like so at age 9, I was preparing myself, and I was thinking to myself, oh gosh, I have to know what I want to say. I have to know what I want to present, because I want her to hear it from me before her friends or from the school, or for her to just find out on her own and be totally unprepared, like how we were. I was totally unprepared, right? And my parents never talked to me about it. My mom never talked to me about those kind of things. So anyway.
Oh, that's really helpful. I did have a question for you. When you found out Jeffrey was stole, so you guys had a conversation with him, and then that 2-week period. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So if I can just summarize it, we knew something was stolen in the classroom, and this was brought up in morning discussion, and they have a morning classroom meeting every day, and it became such a disturbing thing that they would bring it up even after recess, because it was not just a one-time incident. Things were being stolen multiple instances. And so there was an email sent out, there were conversations in the classroom with with the class as a whole, and emails were sent out from the teacher to the parents. So I brought it up with Jeffrey, because I thought, oh, do you know anything about it? I said, no. But there's something about I just had a gut feeling after I think the third day of asking, or third day of seeing that message, I had a gut feeling something was wrong. But it wasn't so much that I knew he was the one, right? Because he's never done something like that before. I think I just had a gut feeling something wasn't right. So I kept asking in different ways. And then it wasn't till maybe the 4th or 5th day when it was confirmed that we knew it was him. But he didn't know that we knew. So we needed to wait. And it was a hard waiting period. But I knew, and when I found out at school, and I just burst into tears, because I thought, oh no, it was that feeling of something was wrong, something was amiss, and it was that feeling of, oh, I was right, but I didn't want to be right, that something was wrong. Yeah. So it was just a matter of waiting for him to come to terms with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That sounds hard. Yeah. Really, really hard. I would have gotten so angry, but yeah.
Yeah. We have to hold it in, rein it in.
A couple of things that I found helpful from the previous session, that some practical advice, having a good poker face when they tell you stuff, I heard was really helpful, because they might say something crazy and you just got to kind of poker face and let them know that this is a safe environment, right? So that could be one thing that you guys keep in mind as well. Kimmy, moving to affection, how do you show affection? How has it changed? You have 3. Any favoritism that you have to kind of see yourself and check yourself, and how did you navigate through all that?
Yeah, when you have multiple children, you'll find that one child may be more affectionate just naturally, more than another. And so I think that that's when you have to be super mindful, because it's really easy to just keep giving affection to the one who asks for or gives it back in return, and kind of ignore the other one who isn't overtly affectionate. But have to keep in mind that they equally need the same amount of affection. And so that's something that I noticed kind of early on, that Madison, she was kind of always on stealth mode, where she was an observer, but she was not super physical with us when she was maybe toddler age. Whereas Sydney was always touching me. She had to hold on to some body part. Audrey the same way. And so, of course, it's really easy to give affection to those children who are asking and even demanding for the affection. So I had to intentionally make the effort to just show a lot of affection to Madison. And it's interesting because over the years, it's changed. Madison is super affectionate now. And it's a good thing, because, she's at that age where she can, very well have a boyfriend. And in the back of my mind, I was always like, saying, you and we got to make sure that she feels completely loved and that there's a lot of affection in the house, so that she's not feeling in want of that from, someone else outside of the family, especially from a boy. So yeah, she is super affectionate with us. And then I know that now it's transition where Sydney is, maybe she's just in this phase, but she's not nearly as affectionate as she was when she was in middle school. And so again, I'm at that same place where I have to intentionally show affection to Sydney. So I will, dogpile her. I'll just grab a hold of her whenever she's near me, and I'll just plant a kiss on her. And so I have to be very intentional about that. And Audrey is still the same. She's still like touching some part of me, even as we watch TV or whatnot. Very important if you have a daughter. None of you guys have daughters, but if you were to have a daughter one day, the affection that a father shows to his daughter, super important, super key, that is a very warm and open and physically loving relationship. And affection doesn't have to always come in the form of like physical touch, right? Like Sang's way of affection is he'll sit on them and he'll pangu all over them, and it's like the girls are laughing, ha 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 ha. And I genuinely think that they feel completely adored and loved by him when he does that to them. So it's crazy, but and then other ways, right? I cook their favorite foods, and I don't cook just what Madison loves or what Audrey loves, but I want to make sure that I go down that list of, I know this is what Sydney loves, I know this is what Audrey loves, and I try to cook for them and show my love for them in that way. So we talk about all the different ways of the love languages, right, that you can speak to your child, and there's a great book all about that, right? Love language to your spouse, love language is that you speak with your children, and determining what that love language is for each child too, so you can speak their love language. So great resources, definitely tap into that and learn about your child, and so that that child always feels loved by you.
Awesome, thank you. Jenny, same question.
I think the only thing I would add on top of that would be, as they get older, using our words to show that we are in support of them. That can be a way to show them affection, because with Jeffrey being he's turning 13 this fall, and he's already, I know starting in 5th grade, he was kind of like already keeping his distance when we were at school, right? But at home, I know that he welcomes the cuddles at night, but it's already, you can see it now that we're home all the time with COVID. We and sheltering in place and distance learning, all of that, he wants his distance, and that's fine. But I feel like with our words, we can be intentional with our words. So many things can be said with our words, right? It can be instructional, it can be dictational, but it can also be, hey, it can be said in such a way that shows support, like, I'm going to be an advocate for you, whatever you need, And so every now and then I'll pause as I walk by, the living room area where he's doing his work, and every now and then he'll ask a question. And when he asks a question, I welcome it. I want to be there, because I'm like, wow, he wants my attention. And so I love it, because I feel like, as they get into these teenage years, they start to withdraw, right? They start to just go to their friends and chat with their friends, and even with the screen limitations that we talked about in the recent weeks, I'm so not a fan of it, right? But if that's the only way they connect with their friends, then you got to give them some of that. But at the same time, I feel like, well, if he's going to ask me a question, maybe it'll lead to something else, and sometimes it does, right? And so I welcome that, and I want to be present for that. And I think that's something that can go a long way, just your presence. Like, you don't have to say a lot, but it's just knowing you're there shows that you care, and shows that you're available to talk when something comes up. we definitely have a child that's more affectionate than others. And then, but surprisingly, even though, even though one is more affectionate than the other two, I feel like at night, they all want me to take turns going into each other's rooms and each other's beds. They don't do that so much with George. I think George has a different way of showing them his affection, but with me, that's always been important to me. And I don't know if it's because my parents never did that with me, and I have always felt like I could have benefited from that, or I may have longed for that. I had so much, I don't know, I feel like there was so much distance between us, between me and my parents starting in middle school years. And whenever I shared sadness or grief, or even just like any kind of feeling, I remember my mom, just because she was so busy, because she was working, and her behavior, she just didn't have time for me. And that's what I feel, makes you not want to talk, right? So it's hard when we're in a busy world and there's always something to do. You always want to busy yourself. We're always multitasking, but sometimes we just need to calm ourselves and just be present.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I do want to leave some time for your questions, but I did have one last question. If there's any encouragement, advice that you wanted to share to these new parents, about anything, could be about anything and everything. I want to give you to an open mic to be able to share any words that you may have for them.
All right. Well, y'all are new parents or not yet parents. um, and let's see if I can put myself in your shoes right now. I feel like when the girls were babies, um, and I was always thinking about I can't wait until blank. Like I can't wait until Madison's walking. I can't wait until Sydney's eating on her own. I can't wait until Audrey's out of her diaper. I was always thinking about the next step ahead and how I couldn't wait until, I got to that next stage so that my life would be just a little bit easier because when they're babies, so much of parenting is physical. And I just remember feeling exhausted all the time, especially with multiple children, right? Um, and now that, fast forward, I've got two kids in college and Audrey and a junior in high school. We just happened to scroll through some old pictures and videos this past week. And, you're looking back at those pictures going, oh my God, they were so cute. Like they're your children. Of course, you're going to think that they're adorable. And so in my heart, I was just feeling all these emotions like, oh my gosh. But I had to ask myself, like, did I even realize at that time, at that stage, how cute and how funny and how fun they were? And, just when parenting is physical and you're tired and you're juggling so many other things, it's so hard to just miss that moment that you're in of just enjoying your child. So I guess my encouragement for the new moms is to try to, as much as possible, enjoy your child in his or her current stage right now. Okay, in his stage right now, you have set. So enjoy his stage right now, not being anxious for the next stage. And all of those big milestones, they'll come sooner than you want them to. And then you're going to be in my shoes one day. Before you know it, you'll be like, oh my God, I'm sending my firstborn to college. What the heck happened? Like, how did time go by so fast? And I remember when I was a new mom, there were older moms telling me this. and giving me the advice of enjoy it while you can because they grow up so fast. And I thought to myself, oh, I can't wait until they grow up, so life will be easier for me. And boy, I bite those words now because here I am. And, you know, it, they are grown up. And how did time fly by as fast as it did? So please, 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 yeah, take in the moment, enjoying your precious child right now in his stage and relish in it. Take tons of pictures, tons of videos. We didn't have the iPhone didn't come out until Audrey was in kindergarten. And so, we had to bust out our big camcorder in order to videotape anything. You guys have it, much easier. So easy to videotape. You will not be sorry for capturing those memories because those will be all that you have down the line.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think the only thing I would add is that every day is a new day. I think for myself, I just remember being so hard on myself or hard on the kids because I have very high expectations of them. And I feel like, you're just reminded that it isn't you who shapes these kids. It's God. God is ultimately the one in charge of them, and he will direct their paths. And we have to trust so much of it. We have to leave so much of it to God. Thank goodness for that, because they'd be pretty messed up. So I think if you can forgive yourself and remind yourself, give yourself God, give yourself God's grace. Know that you're not alone, and that kids are very forgiving as well. If you apologize, if you have, a blowout moment, and it's going to happen, it's okay, because you can, once you have a talk with them afterward about it, or write a letter of apology, or do anything, to show them how sorry you are, then they learn that we all make mistakes and we can all grow from it. So every day's a new day.